Well, ho, 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 everybody. Welcome to another movie in our 12 Days of Christmas movies series. Today, we're going to be talking about the 1989 film Prancer. It is directed by John D. Hancock, written by Greg Taylor. It stars Sam Elliott, Cloris Leachman, Rutanya Alda, Abe Vigoda, Michael Constantine, Rebecca Harold Tickle, and others. The plot synopsis is: a farm girl nurses a wounded reindeer she believes is one of Santa's, hoping to bring it back to health in time for Christmas. Her holiday spirit inspires those around her, something her disheartened father is having trouble understanding. So yeah, Prancer. This is kind of one of these, I would say, almost forgotten Christmas movies. Almost. I know I used to watch it back in the day when I was a kid, but it had been a long time. I probably hadn't actually watched this movie since I was like 8 or 9 years old. But I must have watched it a lot. Either that or it had a big impression on me, because as soon as the movie started, I started just remembering everything. All the scenes clicking, what happens in the plot. And I was just kind of curious to watch it, because I watched the movie a few days ago called One Magic Christmas, and that movie has kind of a low-key, scaled-down, more melancholy approach to a Christmas movie, and it reminded me a lot of Prancer, so it put Prancer in my head, so I had to go find a copy of Prancer to watch. And I'll say this just right up at the top: I really love this movie. It is a really sweet, earnest, a little darker edge to it Christmas movie about the power of the season, about loss and how to cope with loss during the holidays. It's kind of got like a family that's kind of down on their luck. Sam Elliott is the patriarch of the family. This little girl who's really good in this, Rebecca Harold Tickle, she's his daughter. They've recently lost the mother. Their mother recently passed away, and they're just kind of trying to figure out what life means in the wake of that. Compounded with the fact that their farm is actually having a hard time. They're broke. And the father is really distraught and out of sorts, and he kind of projects it and takes it out on his family. And everybody's trying to be understanding of each other during this kind of difficult time. And the movie doesn't really beat you over the head with that. It's just kind of there. It feels very real. It feels very realistic. I grew up in kind of a small New England town. This movie takes place in Michigan, although it was shot in Indiana, but it takes place in Michigan, a small, sleepy Michigan town. It reminded me a lot of my childhood growing up. You know, just the kind of the school dynamics and like going to church and being part of a choir, and the kids feel really real. They feel genuine in a way that a lot of Christmas movies don't. A lot of Christmas movies, everybody's kind of over the top, maybe a little bit more archetypal, but this really actually feels like a character piece all the way down. You know, from Sam Elliott all the way down to the kids. They feel really well-rounded and well-realized, and you kind of get a sense of their inner life. Like I said, this girl, Rebecca Harold Tickle, is fantastic as the lead. She really is able to kind of drive home the way that kids deal with trauma and loss, and what they do to kind of cope with it, and how they kind of maybe even kind of get lost a little bit in a fantasy world. And then she kind of acts out trying to vie for her father's attention because he's kind of absent. The only relationship they have at this point is him kind of yelling at her. And it's just out of his frustration. And you kind of, as the movie goes on, you start to understand a little bit more where he's coming from. But her kind of resolve, her Christmas spirit, her wanting to hold on to the way things used to be in her family, as a source of inspiration for everybody around her. And then there's this kind of maybe not fantastical element with Prancer, the reindeer. It's the reindeer that's wounded. She ends up taking it in and nursing it, or trying to nurse it back to health. And it causes a lot of consternation between her and her father, and then kind of the animal control people in the town, because the reindeer's a wild animal, for lack of a better way to put it. And you're never really sure. The movie never really leans into the idea that it really is Prancer, Santa's reindeer. It doesn't really kind of go there. It's a stand-in for the hope for the dream of this little girl. She wants it to be real. She's willing it to be real to a certain extent. And it's a really beautiful film. I think it's something that is not often talked about anymore. And it's a shame. It's a shame because this could be, it's so heartfelt. You know, I was really taken with it, especially the relationship between the daughter and the father. And Sam Elliott delivers a great performance, a really complex, nuanced, gruff performance. Really does feel like a guy who's just trying to figure it out, and his daughter, and he doesn't know how to communicate with his 8-year-old daughter, and he just doesn't know how to exist in this world anymore, and kind of the trials of being a single father, and how frustrating that is for him, and how just the season itself just depresses him in general, because as you find out later in the film, as the film goes on, Christmas was kind of a special time for their family. And he's lost sight of that. He's lost sight of those little things that you do, the minutia, those things that bring a family together at this time of year, you know? The appreciation that you should have for one another. Maybe you should have it all the time, but even if Christmas is kind of this overly commercialized, it's a little even gross in the relative to that sometimes, it does give us an excuse, an archetype, a framework to be a little bit nicer and treat each other a little bit better. You know, even if it's just for a couple days. And sometimes that means the world to people. That's all they need. That's all the gas they need. That's all the juice they need. And at the end of the day, that's what Prancer is about. At the end of the movie, I like that it kind of leaves this little ambiguous thing, you know, because they take Prancer, they kind of break him out of the animal control after the girl has an accident trying to do it herself. Her father kind of comes around to it and realizing what he's doing to his daughter, what he's doing to his family. Things kind of become clear because she runs away and he doesn't know where she is and he's terrified, and he's just there's a beautiful scene between the father and daughter in her bedroom at the end of the movie where, you know, she's like, I just ran away to get your attention and I want you to come get me and tell me that everything's going to be okay. And he's, because of the kind of man he is, kind of a practical guy, he's like, I can't promise you that everything's always going to be perfect or that we're not going to lose the farm, but we'll have each other. We'll have each other through it all. And that, at the end of the day, is what's important, and that's what life is about to a certain extent, especially when you have a family. Whether it's your immediate family, like if you get married and have kids or whatever, or it's just your extended family, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, you know, grandparents. At some times in your life, that's all that will be there. So it's important to treat those things right and kind of fertilize those things, you know, work towards those relationships. Don't run away from them. Don't allow yourself to get, I don't know, what's the right word? Don't allow yourself to kind of become completely insular. Remember that there's people in your life that will want to help you. Whether that's, you know, a little girl like in the movie, or maybe it's your father, your brother, your cousin, whatever. It's the time to reach out. It's the time to reconnect. And I think Prancer really drives that home beautifully. Because there's all sorts of different, like, little episodic moments in the movie, little parallels to that story, or that subtext, that theme, with her influence on her neighbors and whatnot. Like, there's a recluse old woman who used to be kind of famous in town for her Christmas lights, but something happened and she just got lost in herself a little bit, and this little girl kind of helps her rediscover her place in the community, and also rediscover how much she loves the holiday and how much she loves bringing joy into other people's lives, because she's kind of like the mean old lady. That's the Cloris Leachman character. And then at the end of the movie, there's a little bit of an ambiguity as to whether or not, you know, Prancer is really, it could potentially be kind of dark. Prancer kind of charges at an edge of a cliff and then just disappears. And you don't know what happened, really. there's a little moment where you see kind of an animated Santa Claus, and Prancer goes and rejoins Santa Claus way in the distance, like in a shadow form. And it doesn't feel like it's really happening. It feels like kind of a projection or a fantasy the little girl is having, because if that reindeer fell off the cliff, the reindeer would be dead, there'd be no more. So even then, at the end, it gives you like this little bite of reality, this little piece of melancholy to leave you with. But the family is healed to a certain extent, right? You don't know what's going to happen afterwards, but in this moment, they're together again and they're one. And I really appreciated that message this year, especially. It's been a tough year for everybody, and I think it's a good reminder to not take the people in your life for granted, and reach out. Everybody's just a phone call away. So I'm glad that I watched Prancer. I really am. You should check it out. You should watch it. If you can find it, you should check it out. It's on Stars right now, and if you have, or you can go rent it on Amazon Prime. I think that's where I rented it. Actually, no, I got a free week of Stars, and then I just immediately canceled it. Just so I could watch Prancer. But yeah, there you go. All right, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my Twitter, for Dan's Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for one of these videos in the future, obviously maybe not a Christmas movie per se, but any movie. I'm always looking for direction. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for like a deep dive for Zoobox Goes to the Movies, leave it in the comments. Also, did you watch Prancer when you were growing up? Have you ever seen this movie? I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear what people think about this movie, because honestly, it's not something I had heard in a long time until that I watched One Magic Christmas, and it kind of just put this in my mind, in the forefront of my mind. I was like, oh yeah, Prancer. I don't know. I'm curious if it's on anybody's Christmas rotation, I guess. It would make a great double feature with One Magic Christmas. Honestly. Be a kind of a down, not totally a downer night, but a melancholy night. Maybe like, yeah, be fun for you. It's fun for me. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And Merry Christmas.